And Carlos has just reminded me of something too. We spoke earlier today about the power of the patient voice, and we have a lot to offer. We are also incredibly grateful to the companies that sponsor us, the pharmaceutical companies. Part of that collaboration and working with them is that we can be alerted when there's an application for a new drug being made in a country, that they can request what's known as a patient submission. So just to be clear, we put in patient submissions for patisiran, inotersen and tafamidis. Many of you here contributed to those patient submissions. I'm sure they're sorry that they asked for them, because we did submit War and Peace to talk about the burden of this disease on patients and caregivers. I think ours must be among the longest patient submissions that were ever submitted. So thank you to all of you here who contributed to those. We're very, very grateful for that, and it will invariably benefit patients who are coming behind us. On that note, I'd like to introduce you to Sandra Campbell from the Northern Ireland Rare Diseases Partnership, and her presentation is Shining the Torch of Awareness. Sandra Campbell.
Hello. First of all, I'd like to thank Rosaleen again for inviting me to this very historic occasion today. I'm very proud to stand here to represent NARDP, and of which amyloidosis is a leading member and an inspirational light over the past few years as well to us. So very privileged to be here. Thank you. So today I just want to give you a snapshot really of what we do, what NARDP is about, and how we collaborate within Northern Ireland with teams of clinicians, pharmaceutical companies, families, researchers, anyone who will listen to us talking about rare disease, and also how we collaborate with our partners in the South, Rare Disease Ireland, and how the work that they do, that we do, comes together to hopefully push forward a better quality of life for anyone living with a rare disease from the very, very outset. My journey to rare disease began with a personal journey. My father had progressive supranuclear palsy, a neurological degenerative disease, and just by chance I came into the world of rare disease when I was taking a career break from teaching at the time, 22 years ago. So I've been around a long time and had many different roles in the field. In the early days in 2000, we were a tiny, tiny charity, as were other rare disease charities like Huntington's disease, motor neuron disease. And we just collaborated together to take out education and awareness about rare diseases to different groups and to different education forums. And during that time, we realised, the diagnoses are all different, but a lot of the issues and the challenges were exactly the same. A lot of overlaps, certainly in terms of symptoms, but a lot of overlaps in terms of challenges for families, what they struggled to achieve. And the difficult thing was we knew exactly what our families needed was right there in front of us, but no one was making that referral, or the access to that service wasn't just available at the right time. So we drew a mission that we were going to take this forward. And luckily for us, we were working with a lady, Christine Collins, who's now Christine Collins MBE, who was able to spearhead the whole voluntary endeavour. And in 2012, we constituted as a registered charity, which we are, and we've been working from since. So that's a little bit of background about NARDP and how it came to be. So our mission statement is we work together to ensure that no one is disadvantaged because of the rarity of their condition. That's a big ask. That is a big ask, but we are making great progress. We are making great progress, and I think days like today really help us to push forward that whole agenda, that it's the medical treatment, but also the psychological support and the family support and the connection, that human connection that we know is so vitally important when you're on this journey of rare disease. And rare diseases, as we know, aren't rare. 1 in 17 people are affected by a rare disease worldwide. For Northern Ireland, that's around 100,000 people, which is a population of Derry in Northern Ireland is living or affected by a rare disease. So it's massive. So we haven't got time to waste. So how do we achieve this? How have we set out to achieve this aim? I suppose we can drill it down into 3 areas: support, taking action, connecting, advocating, educating and innovating, and pursuing a vision for change. So that's what we have been about this past, particularly 10 years. And you might ask why? Why rare disease more than any other condition? Rare diseases are very much in the shadows, and I love the title of today, Emerging from the Shadows, because very much rare diseases are sitting in the background, and very often, and a lot of the clinicians have mentioned, thinking outside the box sometimes is a good idea. When patients present with a certain collection of symptoms, maybe consider rare. Is this something that isn't a regular condition? Our aims, like Carlos had mentioned as well, early diagnosis is vital, as early as possible. So important. We've had, certainly in PSP, a lot of fatalities because the diagnosis wasn't made in time. Where in that particular condition, patients have a tendency to fall backwards, the risk of falling backwards. And we had several families who had patients in the very early stages of PSP, fell backwards, didn't realise this was going to be a major problem, had fatal injuries and died during the period of diagnosis. So, it's really, really difficult. Improved communication is one of our aims, coordination of care. Again, Carlos, I think a lot of our work has overlapped. Connecting families to relevant healthcare professionals and developing pathways and accessing those care pathways as well where they are available and developing new ones where they're not. And ultimately, access to treatment and cures is very much our aim and the research around that. So our own journey, as I said, this is my father, William Bell. He was a Navy man, so he got Dinger Bell in the Navy, more commonly known as Dinger Bell in Derry. And my father was diagnosed with PSP. And we were very naive in 2000 when he had his diagnosis because we had a brilliant GP, Dr. Conor White, sadly, who's no longer with us, from Oakleaf Medical Practice. I don't know if anybody is, apart from Sinead from Derry, but he was an amazing GP. And he realised very quickly this collection of symptoms isn't what I normally see. So he had a referral made to neurology very, very quickly. And my father was one of the few people with PSP who did get a fairly fast diagnosis because things moved very quickly, but only because he was fortuitous and that the GP and his neurologist had a special interest in neurological conditions. And we naively thought that this was everybody's experience. When you have a rare disease, your GP will help, will know, and the neurologist will make a diagnosis, and everything will be well. I suppose, like a lot of families, we reached diagnosis and with great relief. But then the relief turned to terrible fear and desolation because we knew very quickly there's no treatment and there's no cure. So that's a difficult stage for families where there isn't a treatment, and so happy for amyloidosis that all these treatments are now available, and particularly in north, south, in the UK, they're available. For many conditions, there are no treatments and no cures. It's a palliative care pathway or just the multidisciplinary support. So that was a bit difficult. Relief with the diagnosis, but then devastation. There's no cure, there's no treatment. So that was difficult. So we found ourselves on a journey then of discovery, of trying to work out how do we cope with this? What can we do to make his life better, and at least to try and hold back the burden of this disease. And that was a difficult stage. And I'm away too fast. Can I go back? I hope I can go back. Yes. So I attended, at the time I began to work with the PSP Association and working in education and training in the health service about care of the patient with PSP. And I attended a palliative care conference, and I have to admit I stole this slide of Dr. Rachel Holland, who gave permission to use it. She used this slide as an example of what happens when you have a traumatic event. I think we all recognise where this is. This is 9/11 in New York. Can I ask you, where do you think these people are running to? To safety, thank you. There's a word I'm waiting for, maybe I might hear it. They're running for home. They're running for home. Because when you have a traumatic experience, Whether that's a physically traumatic experience or an emotionally traumatic experience, being given a diagnosis that is life-limiting, life-changing, you run for home. And we would do a lot of work on the psychological first aid for NARDP. We think a lot about psychological first aid for all our member groups and our members. And the research tells us that if at that point of diagnosis, a patient leaves the clinician's room without a support link, a network, a phone number, someone to call, a group to call, the outcome of their long-term psychological health will not be as positive as it will be if they get immediate support. And that's really important, and it's something that we advocate a lot in NARDP, that we link people in. That was our aim, that was our vision. So this is what happens. Patients go home, and this is what they see. Just a blank. They don't know where to go. They don't know who to call. There's no signpost. It's a long road. What are we going to do? And there's no one there to help. And again, this is something we try to avoid. We don't want this happening any of our people in the rare disease community. The difficulty in this stage is many people will go and research for themselves about their condition into Dr. Google and find a few horror stories. And it's the horror stories, it's the negative we latch on to. We're not going to latch on to the positive bits. We're going to latch on to the fearful bits. The negative bias is going to take over there. My husband's here, Joe, and when we had the diagnosis of PSP, did Google, and because it's all we had. And this was in 2000, so we didn't have access to the information we have even now, 22 years later. But even that, I suppose, gave us some kind of picture of what lay ahead. And even if it wasn't good news, we still needed to know. There's a need to know. And going from there, when you do begin to unravel things and you do begin to discover what this condition, what this diagnosis means, it can look a bit like this, a spaghetti junction. You don't know where to go, which road is next, and there's the who, where, what, when, why. Who do I need to contact? Where will they be? How do I get there? Will it be here? Will I have to travel? All those questions going around in people's head. We need a signpost. So again, our work in NARDP is about removing that mystery, removing that fear, and we become part of that signpost along with the team of clinicians around the patient as well. An evidence-based practice and empirical research demonstrate improved long-term outcomes in psychological health and well-being if immediate support is given following the confirmation of a life-changing event or diagnosis. There are hundreds and thousands of pieces of research, but I've chosen 3 just to add to this that I thought were very relevant, and some of these will mention the journey of a traumatic diagnosis and the need for immediate support there. So, what do we do? That is our support network. We also educate, we innovate, we advocate, and we connect. So we look at the education that we have tried to accomplish over the past 10 years. Again, this is a snapshot. It's not conclusive by any means, but it's a snapshot that some of us might be able to relate to. So we have worked a lot with the general practitioners training in Northern Ireland on the CPD to try to raise awareness of rare diseases and needs of the common needs of rare disease patients. No one on the earth could ever understand the needs of 8,000 different rare diseases, 8,000 plus that we know of. There are more we don't know of. And then, of course, we have syndromes without a name. No clinician will ever be expected to know that. But just to even understand the care needs, the psychological needs of the patient at that point, and the signposting needs is a big part of our work. We work with healthcare professionals in hospitals, community, and in hospices. And a big part of that work we found was that when we did information sessions about a particular condition, not only were the clinicians and physicians able to go off and maybe give a little bit more tailored support, but also recognising people who were unidentified, maybe symptoms that began to raise a red flag. This may be something rare. With PSP, the red flag would be raised with Parkinson's disease because there's an overlap in misdiagnosis with Parkinson's and sometimes stroke as well. So sometimes the professionals attending our conference would come and say afterwards, oh, actually, I have a patient, I'm beginning to think now, and these are the symptoms. We say, okay, well, maybe investigate that further, get the referrals made and see where that goes. So that's really important. So there's a double benefit in doing that. Medical students at QUB regularly have, in Queen's, have training on rare diseases as well. I'm not sure if AJ is here today. Is AJ? She's here. AJ is involved in that. Professor Amy J. McKnight has spearheaded a lot of that work in working with the medical students in Queen's. We've also recently begun to work with the student nurses in the University of Ulster in their training as well on rare diseases. And again, I think for amyloidosis, that's really important that we work in the Derry education establishments to raise awareness. We've also done awareness training in the North West Regional College around rare diseases, and I think certainly for amyloidosis we've still space there. We're still early days in our planning, but to bring awareness of the symptoms, because a lot of our students go off and work in the hospitals and community care homes and so on, and just to be able to recognise and support would be good too. So we're working with universities, the nurses, the trainee medics, the CPD, schools and colleges. We recently did an event with STEM, the Science, Technology, Engineering and Maths programme around rare diseases, and we had 600 students who were about to choose their degree courses, and we were saying, oh, come on, think about rare disease, think about a career in rare disease, and we showed them all the different aspects and all the different roles that they may go on to do with rare diseases and pathways to follow, career pathways to follow with that. So that was a successful programme. Local and regional media, papers online. We had a BBC appeal recently, and two of our 10-year-olds actually led that appeal, one who's living with a rare disease and one whose mum's living with a rare disease. And, you know, Trevor MacDonald couldn't have done it better. They were just incredible telling their stories. They were brilliant. We stakeholder events, and we work in political forums as well. And we've just recently established an all-party group for rare disease at Stormont, which has again been a big dream, a big vision for us to achieve that. And really, you might have gathered, we'll just talk to anybody who will listen to us talking about rare disease anywhere, anytime. It doesn't matter. So just a little picture, a snapshot of our all-party group for rare disease now in Stormont. And again, you know, I think everything I'm saying here about Northern Ireland will have the equivalent in the South, because we link very closely with the politicians there, with the clinicians, with the groups, as we'll see in further slides. Thankfully for us, we've had individual contact with these political representatives over the years. And I think they didn't have a choice when it came to who would like to put their hand up and volunteer to be in the all-party group. Their back was to the wall, I'll be honest with you. Their back was to the wall. But thankfully we have them, and hopefully politically things will continue to stay even in Northern Ireland, and we will get them to do what we need them to do on behalf of our community as well. So our shared education across border, again, this is only a little snapshot of what we've done and what we hope to do. We have our North-South conference annually, alternating between Dublin and Belfast. Obviously with COVID we didn't have a conference this past 2 years, but next year we hope to relaunch that. It's a very successful day, and we have stakeholders from rare disease from the south and the north coming together from all the different areas of rare disease to share information and to make plans on how we work better together in the future. One of the huge, and it's a small ask, but it's a huge achievement if it happens, is that, and I think we talked about this earlier, why do patients have to travel maybe 150 miles for a blood test when they're passing a hospital in a different jurisdiction? It's absolutely crazy. And I'm very concerned that we have a connection with some groups in Letterkenny whose children, very sick children, having to travel to Dublin for a blood test. That shouldn't happen. So for us, that's a big aim as well, to reduce that burden on families and be practical. Get the health services to work closely together and be practical. Again, at that, we have over 100 stakeholders, researchers, pharma companies, clinicians and experts in the field of rare diseases. Another recent hit was the Rare Disease Implementation Plan for the UK. it has been developed recently across the 4 jurisdictions. Northern Ireland has an extra strand in cross-border working as well. So everything that we hope to achieve in Northern Ireland hopefully will work cross-border too. And that is a big part of our implementation plan. And we work very closely with the Rare Diseases Ireland Rare Diseases as well. We have the Department of Health document there if you want to read up about that. There are 14 actions in that plan, and we're currently establishing specialist groups to progress the aims of the 14 actions. So that's on that document, just on the link there. We don't have time today to talk about it in any more detail. So we advocate. So we educate, we advocate. We advocate for individual needs. That has been done on an ad hoc basis up until very recently, until we recently had funding to employ 2 people who could take that aim forward, and I'll talk about them in a minute. We offer peer support to our groups as well. We have our local group, Foyle Northwest Forum is Foyle and Donegal Forum for Rare Disease, and we try to meet every 3 months. Sometimes we'll have speakers, sometimes we just want to sit and complain to each other about things, have a cup of tea, have a gossip, catch up on the news. It's a multifunction group really, and I think the most important part of that group is the connection with other people who are living in the same world of the rare disease challenges. In 2018, we were thankfully given funding for 2 posts, and that has really set us on the map, I think, in terms of supporting people more, in a more structured way. 2 excellent staff now involved. So again, the signpost to them can be done immediately following diagnosis, and they will help the families find as much as they can what they need and support them. We have a mental health focus with one of those posts as well, mental health for people living with rare diseases. We obviously are trying to improve support signpost, and we educate. We have awareness and training events wherever we can fit them in. I have to say we're all volunteers with the Rare Disease Partnership, apart from the 2 paid workers now. We've always been just volunteers. So our points of contact then, in terms of advocacy, Adele Rogan and Caroline McFerrin. And the banner says, alone we are rare, together we are strong. And I think that is a very powerful message for everyone in the rare disease world. 2 excellent members of the team who will stop at nothing to help support patients and families at any point. They unravel the confusion, which is really, really important, especially following a diagnosis. So we have just some pictures here of our recent work, lobbying with the Minister for Health. I think he's going to block our details, block the email address, block the numbers very soon. But you know what? It's worked. It has worked because we have now got Department of Health support for everything we're doing, which is just fantastic. It's taken a long time. We're not like Rosaline, we can't do things in 2 years, but we're getting there, Also, we work a lot with the political groups in Stormont as well. And in this picture here, it's just, I suppose this was around Rare Disease Day. Some of our members there, just raising awareness at Stormont and raising the challenges that we all have up there. And in that group, we have amyloidosis, will be represented PSP, motor neuron Huntington's, Sjurg, Strauss, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, 22q deletions, other genetic disorders, and so on and so on. And the group is a massive representation of a lot of different rare conditions. More recently, on Rare Disease Day, we couldn't have our conference, but we had our own conference in the Guildhall in Derry with the Mayor and with our local foil group there. Some members of our local foil group, the youngest member is 18 months and an absolute sweetheart. And Rosaline's there flying the flag for amyloidosis, of course, as well. So those events are very good because we do invite political representatives to those meetings as well on Rare Disease Day. And every year in the Guildhall, they host for us a rare disease celebration event. Okay, so we innovate. I'm sorry, I'm trying not to run over time here, but we innovate. where we can. And I suppose the rare disease implementation plan is a big focus for us at the moment, trying to have those actions turn from words into reality for people, and so that, it's not just a piece of paper, it's not a talking shop at Stormont, it needs to affect people in their day-to-day lives if it's going to make any difference at all. The genomics work, 100,000 Genomes project, has been really, really valuable for Northern Ireland in mapping the genes, and it's now developing into the Genoceanic project, and that will help, we hope, in eventual stratified medicine and precision medicine going forward for gene therapies for members as well. The regional molecular diagnostic service there's movement on that, and the NIRAD card disease registries is a huge point of focus for us. As we talked about earlier, the registries are so important for rare disease, so that we can collect that data, collect the numbers, and give that evidence. I mean, everything needs to be evidence-based. If you want money for anything, you need to show the evidence. We're not going to have the evidence if we haven't got a registry of how many people are living with these diseases and which ones and what they need and what they've got and what they haven't got. That's really, really important. And again, Professor Amy J. McKnight is a lead on that project. Training and education, ongoing constantly, as I said, whoever will listen to us. We have our all-party working group, and we have representation from NRDP in a lot of the groups for that. We have our All-Ireland Forum. And really our aim, again, is access to earlier diagnosis, care pathways and treatments, and research, funding for research to make all that happen. I have some more links in there to research that's ongoing. We have the rare diseases plan, and the one below is the rare disease priorities for progress, which is really, really good to read. That's a recent piece of work as well that NRDP were involved with and some of our stakeholders. So that's all going on. So we have plenty to keep us out of trouble. And we connect. Local networks. We have our Foyle and Northwest network. The Northwest, the Donegal connection has fallen away a little bit, but only because of COVID and the restrictions we had around that. We have our regional events. We work with Public Health Agency, Healthcare Trust, the Encompass Project, cross-border, again, our relationships with different groups in the South, All-Ireland Rare Disease Forum and so on. And European and international partnerships with Eurotas as well are ongoing. So I hope that shines a torch on some of our work. We're still developing existing projects and scoping new initiatives and opportunities, often led by our members and families. And that they are the driving force. We're very much informed by what families are telling us that they need. Okay. So, just to finish with a little word about Rosaleen and amyloidosis. That Rosaleen is a champion, an amazing, multi-talented lady that we've had the privilege of getting to know in the past 2 years through her work for amyloidosis. Thank you. She continually inspires us all. She educates us, she advocates, she innovates, and she connects. And she has achieved all the aims that we've been trying to achieve for the past 20 years. She's done that beautifully. And, so here we are today. It's an honour to have been part of this historic day. And Rosaleen, we thank you. We thank you. NRDP is indebted to you for your work with NRDP and with amyloidosis. And I was trying to find a quote. I know you like John O'Donoghue. I was trying to find a nice quote to finish with. And the one that kept coming back to me was Winston Churchill's quote. We make a living by what we get, but we make a life by what we give. And I think that sums Rosaleen up for us. Absolutely. So thank you. And thank you for listening. And I have some contact details for NIRDP here. We have Twitter, Facebook, website. We have telephone, email addresses there for our 2 employees who would be absolutely delighted to hear from anyone that they can help at all. And again, our work continues. And just to finish, I just want to say, Ní neart go cur le héile. We will achieve more together. So gur a míle mai hagat.